Think about a shipping container for a second. A rigid, corrugated steel box.
Right, the standard ones you see stacked up on cargo ships.
Exactly. It has fixed dimensions, a heavy locked door, and, well, whatever is packed inside is just completely trapped in the dark until someone physically unlatches it at its final destination.
Yeah, the container dictates entirely how the contents are moved and accessed.
Right. And for centuries, our most critical infrastructure, how we store knowledge, how we build software, how we connect to the world, it's all been built exactly like that. Locked in static, unyielding containers.
But those boxes are starting to crack.
They really are. Welcome to today's deep dive, by the way. If you are someone who is deeply curious and values learning efficiently, this one is absolutely for you. We're looking at a stack of sources today that show how these traditional containers are being systematically dismantled.
It's a fascinating shift to observe.
We're going to explore how a $200 bare circuit board somehow outperforms a high-end server. We'll discover hidden operating systems living invisibly inside cheap laptops. And we'll see how the rigid spine of the printed book is being shattered completely.
And when you look at the connective tissue across all these seemingly disconnected case studies, the common thread is really a radical democratization of access.
Right.
We're moving away from a world where knowledge and the tools to build it are restricted by massive barriers to entry. The traditional gatekeepers, whether that's a legacy publishing house or an expensive telecommunications network, they're just being bypassed.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start with the oldest, most universally recognized container of all, the physical book.
A classic container.
For hundreds of years, a book has operated like a locked photograph of an idea. Once the ink dries and it's bound, the idea is frozen.
Right, it's static. But our sources, specifically diving into the Academic Book of the Future project, which was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the British Library, they show that definition is radically evolving.
Evolving just to keep up with the sheer speed of digital discovery, right?
Exactly. The traditional academic monograph is still the gold standard in the humanities, is how researchers communicate. But the data points out a fascinating paradox.
Oh, what kind of paradox?
Well, there are actually more individual academic titles being published right now than at any other point in history. The volume is staggering.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but individual sales of those specific titles are plummeting. The underlying economic model is buckling under its own weight because of what we can call the out-of-date before it's printed problem.
Which makes total sense when you think about the pipeline. You do the research, you draft the manuscript, it goes through rigorous peer review, revisions, typesetting.
It's a massive process.
Yeah, and by the time the supposedly definitive book on a fast-moving subject actually hits a physical shelf, it could easily be a year or two behind the current consensus. It's like trying to navigate a modern city using a map drawn 5 years ago.
Exactly. What researchers need isn't a locked photograph.
Right. It's like they need a live, collaborative Google Doc with a multimedia library attached.
And that exact need is what led to the development of the BOOC, Books as Open Online Content.
Oh, right. The platform from UCL Press.
Yes. It's a prime example of this shift. It entirely abandons the idea of a book as a static PDF that you just read from top to bottom. Instead, it functions as a browser-based, non-linear presentation of information.
So it's a living book.
Exactly. You might have a peer-reviewed long-form article sitting right next to a short blog post or, embedded audio interviews and video clips.
I love the specific project they highlighted using this format, the Paper Trails, BOOC. This is where it gets incredibly cool.
It's a very unique approach to history.
It really is. Usually when we read history, we just get the historian's final polished narrative. But Paper Trails actively brings in the voices of the practitioners who actually make that historical study possible.
Right, the people behind the scenes.
Yeah. We are talking about archivists, librarians, collection managers. Their work is historically completely invisible to the end reader.
To visualize how this changes things, imagine an archivist unearthing a 19th century manuscript. In a traditional book, a historian would quote it and just move on.
Right.
But in the Paper Trails platform, the historian's peer-reviewed analysis is just one stream of content. Right beside it, there is a dedicated space for the archivist to publish a reflective piece.
Oh, like noting a specific water stain or some marginalia that wouldn't fit into a rigid academic paper.
Exactly. It's organized into 4 streams: research stories, co-production, collection profiles, and engagement. It gives equal weight to the preservation and the analysis.
And the creators point out that this living platform allows for the inclusion of voices that legacy publishing models historically excluded.
Yes. specifically bringing in far more perspectives from the global south, where traditional publishing costs can be a massive barrier.
And the editors of the Hidden Voices call for papers took this philosophy down to the very words they used, didn't they?
They did. When they released new academic work, they refused to call them issues or volumes.
Because those words carry the baggage of static print runs.
Right. They consciously chose the word updates. The knowledge is positioned as an ongoing, evolving conversation.
Okay, but hold on. I have to push back here.
Go for it.
If a text is constantly morphing, adding videos, shifting its arguments, is it really a book anymore? I mean, don't we lose the permanence that makes a book valuable? The ability to cite page 42 and know it will always say the exact same thing.
What's fascinating here is that the academic community is wrestling heavily with that exact tension.
Yeah.
How do you cite a moving target?
Exactly.
The BOOC format solves this by setting double-blind, peer-reviewed articles alongside fluid, reflective practitioner case studies. It's attempting to redefine authority entirely.
Redefine authority. How so?
Instead of authority meaning being the final unchangeable word, it becomes representing the most accurate, continuously evolving consensus.
Ah, okay. The medium becomes secondary to the most effective transmission of the knowledge.
Exactly.
That redefinition perfectly lines up with my absolute favorite fun fact from the project's public vote. They ran this massive public competition to find the academic book that changed the world.
Right, starting with a long list of 200 incredibly prestigious titles.
And the winner, beating out all these institutionally backed papers, was Charles Darwin's Origin of Species.
A brilliant irony. Darwin was a man operating completely outside the traditional academic container of his time. He didn't hold a university position, and his book was published outside the university press system.
The most influential academic book was written by an outsider, which builds the perfect bridge to our next source.
The hardware side of things.
Yes. If the future of knowledge involves these massively complex, dynamic digital platforms, we run into a brand new bottleneck. Who actually gets to build them?
Historically, if you wanted to build and host these platforms, you needed a $3,000 developer machine.
Right. But the sources show us that hardware container is quietly breaking wide open too. Here's where it gets really interesting.
We are looking at a technology called Crostini. It's essentially a full Linux operating system hidden deep inside Chrome OS.
I love this concept. It's like discovering a secret high-performance V8 engine hidden underneath the hood of a golf cart.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, Chromebooks were originally introduced as these incredibly simple, almost disposable devices, right? Just web browsers wrapped in cheap plastic.
True. But today, they allow users to run a completely full Debian-based Linux container right alongside your regular everyday Chrome desktop.
But how does that work securely? Chrome OS is inherently paranoid about security.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about the architectural mechanism. Chrome OS ensures every app runs in its own tightly sealed sandbox.
So if an app gets compromised, it can't infect the rest of the machine.
Right. Now, if you just installed a standard dual boot system to run Linux, you'd shatter that security model. Instead, Chrome OS runs a highly secure virtual machine. It boots up a professional-grade Linux distribution inside a deeply isolated sandbox.
So it's like having a highly secure, soundproof glass room built right in the middle of a bank lobby.
I like where this is going.
The developer gets to sit inside that glass room with blowtorches and heavy machinery to build whatever they want. But if an experiment explodes, the explosion is entirely contained. The rest of the bank, the Chrome OS, remains untouched.
That captures the mechanism perfectly. It gives the developer total command line freedom without compromising the host machine.
But because you have these two separate environments, you inevitably run into friction when they try to interact, right?
Exactly. The sources detail several troubleshooting scenarios. For example, updating the Debian version from stretch to stable requires editing the @capped sources.list file.
Wow, okay, getting into the weeds.
Yeah. Or users often encounter errors when they try to open their standard Chrome file manager and view the files created by the Linux side.
Right, because the bank teller out in the lobby can't just casually reach through the glass and grab a file.
Precisely. It's a permissions mismatch. Yeah. The developer has to run specific commands like GRUPAD inside the Linux shell to explicitly grant the host machine permission to look inside the sandbox.
And what if the heavy machinery inside the glass room completely seizes up?
You can't always shut it down from the inside. You have to go out to a special Chrome developer shell, like the bank manager, and type vmc stop termina to forcefully terminate the virtual machine.
The documentation brings up another really fascinating quirk, specifically about networks. Say I'm a developer building a local version of a BOOC platform. Normally, I would just type localhost into my web browser to test it.
Right, which tells the browser to look at the computer you are currently running on.
But on a Chromebook using the setup, localhost goes nowhere. Why does that break?
It all comes back to the soundproof classroom. Because the Linux container is a virtual machine, it generates its own isolated network, its own internal phone system.
Ah. So when the developer is inside the Linux container and types localhost, the container just looks at itself.
Exactly. But your primary Chrome web browser lives out in the bank lobby. When it dials localhost, it only checks the lobby. It has no idea the classroom even exists.
So how do you get them to talk?
The developer has to use a command like hostname-i to find the specific internal IP address the virtual machine assigned to itself,
Yeah.
or set up an automated port forwarder.
Okay, I have to push back again here.
I figured you right.
Look at all the hooks you just described. Finding hidden IP addresses, dealing with group head permissions, forcefully terminating virtual machines.
Yeah.
Why go through all of this hassle? Why wouldn't a developer just buy a traditional PC?
If we connect this hyper-technical setup to the bigger picture, it's about combining extreme security with ultimate freedom.
Okay, walk me through that.
A traditional PC that gives a developer full administrative freedom is a nightmare for an IT department to secure. It requires expensive software.
Right, because the developer can accidentally break the whole system.
Exactly. A Chromebook is practically unhackable by design, and it often costs a fraction of the price of a high-end Mac. By embedding this secure Linux container, an organization can hand a developer an IT-managed, budget-friendly device that still provides complete command-line freedom.
So it fundamentally lowers the financial barrier to professional software development.
Exactly. It shatters the hardware container.
Which brings us to the final and, quite frankly, the most mind-blowing paradigm shift in our stack of sources today. We've seen how books are dissolving into digital webs and how cheap hardware can secretly run operating systems to build those webs.
But what happens when you take these devices out into the real world?
Right. Specifically to places where the global internet container is broken or entirely unavailable.
This is where we turn to a fascinating field study published in the Journal of Learning for Development. The researchers focused on deploying offline learning management systems, or an LMS, using microservers in Tanzania.
The context here is absolutely vital. Platforms like Moodle are the backbone of global education now. But an LMS assumes the student has reliable, affordable internet access.
And the study points out a harsh reality. In Tanzania, the cost of a 1 gigabyte mobile data plan doubled due to new taxes.
Doubled, making cloud-based learning a mathematical impossibility for so many.
Right. So the researchers proposed a brilliant inversion. If the students cannot afford to reach the cloud, you simply bring the cloud directly to the students.
They crammed all the background software you need to run a complex website, a LAMP stack, onto a tiny microserver that broadcasts its own offline Wi-Fi hotspot.
And they set up a technological showdown to test this.
Yes. In the ring, they placed 4 devices. A $900 high-spec Android tablet, a $700 Chromebook, a $285 low-spec Android tablet, and finally, a bare-bones naked circuit board, a $200 Raspberry Pi 4B.
They utilized a benchmarking tool called JMeter to simulate dozens of simultaneous users interacting with the course material at the exact same time.
Clicking links, downloading PDF.
Exactly. They measured response times for 1 user, 30 users, and a massive load of 100 simultaneous users.
The Chromebook had the absolute fastest raw response times, scoring a 95. But the hidden flaw was that the Linux container couldn't directly control the Chromebook's Wi-Fi antenna to broadcast a hotspot.
Right. It required an external router as a middleman, which led to frustrating random router disconnects during sustained tests.
But the little $200 Raspberry Pi held its ground remarkably well. During the intense 100-user simulation, it managed the immense traffic load with an average login response time of under 1,354 milliseconds.
Which is incredibly fast for a massive load on a tiny board.
Meanwhile, the tablet's fractured. The low-spec tablet completely choked under the weight of 100 users, taking nearly 8 full seconds just to load a single page.
Completely unusable for a classroom.
But what confused me was the $900 high-spec tablet.
Yeah.
It had bizarre, totally unpredictable performance dips. The ultimate conclusion of the study is that the $200 Raspberry Pi is the optimal choice.
It is.
But I'm staring at these results and I'm genuinely confused. Wait, an Android tablet has a built-in battery for power outages and a touchscreen for an interface. On paper, it sounds like the ultimate portable server. Why did it struggle so much compared to a bare circuit board?
This raises an important question. Hardware specs aren't everything. Software architecture is king.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
The Android OS on those tablets is fiercely optimized for one overriding goal: preserving battery life.
Because the worst thing a tablet can do is die while you're watching a movie.
Precisely. To preserve battery, the Android OS aggressively hunts down and puts background applications to sleep, since standard Android software artificially limits a mobile hotspot to only 10 concurrent users.
So the tablet's operating system is actively fighting against the user. It treats the students logging in like a battery-draining virus trying to ruin the device.
Yes. A server, by definition, must stay wide awake indefinitely, frantically managing dozens of heavy simultaneous connections.
And the Raspberry Pi does that.
The Raspberry Pi wins because it runs a mature, stable Linux environment. The exact same robust environment we just talked about Chrome OS tapping into with Crostini.
Oh, wow. It all connects. The open-source software stack is the foundational layer. It powers the secure developer environment on a budget laptop, and it powers the remote offline server deep in an internet black spot.
Exactly.
We have gone on an absolutely incredible journey today. We started by shattering the rigid spine of the traditional academic book into living, open platforms.
Then we unlocked hidden developer superpowers in affordable laptops.
And finally, we saw how that same open-source philosophy is used to bypass restrictive internet infrastructure entirely, turning a cheap circuit board into an offline university for 100 students in East Africa.
This is exactly why understanding these shifts matters. Whether you're prepping for a meeting or learning a new skill, true innovation isn't always about the most expensive new gadget. It's about how adaptable, open, and accessible we can make our knowledge and our tools.
It's about looking at the locked shipping container and realizing you can just dismantle the box entirely.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, building on all of this.
Ooh, let's hear it.
We just established that a $200 piece of hardware can serve a university's worth of dynamic content to 100 students in a completely offline village.
Right.
What happens when these off-grid, hyperlocal networks stop just consuming information and start generating and sharing their own interconnected living books peer-to-peer? If local microservers can bypass the global cloud entirely, could the actual future of the internet be thousands of completely disconnected, highly localized, self-sustaining internets?
That is mind-blowing. From the dark, locked steel of a shipping container to a sprawling web of living knowledge that anyone can access and build anywhere in the world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the democratization of everything. We'll see you next time.